Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Charles from the channel Books on Serial. I'm here to bring you a really special interview. This is probably one of my favorite authors out there right now. I have Sloane Kennedy on my channel here today. So how are you doing today, Sloane?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, and that's really nice to hear. That's such lovely compliments. Thank you.
You deserve it. I discovered your Protector series and I just devour. I'm not done with it, but I devoured like every single book. I was like, okay, I have to pace myself. Because at the end of the book, I'm like, I already want to buy book two. I already bought them all on audio, so I'm like, I need to pace myself because it's just
Yeah,
so good.
people
It's like
also say
candy.
they have to pace themselves because the books are so dark that they kind of need to space them out and put some light, fluffy stuff in between. So yeah,
But
totally get it.
I love your dark stuff though. So
Oh, okay, good.
I could sit here and read all of these, but like should I? Like I should wait. I should hold off and like space them out so like I don't run out of books by you to read. So I'm not like not looking around going, okay, when's Sloan's next release
Well,
gonna
there's only
drop?
like 40 some books, so
I will probably read it really. I'm a really fast reader.
are you?
So like I could just like go, okay, I'm gonna read a 10 book series in a week. Okay, that's
Okay,
easy. Easy mission accomplished.
right.
So my first question I wanted to ask you is, how did you get into writing romance? Were you always a romance reader, and you just decided to try your hand at romance?
I was. When I was a teenager, I just started reading romance and just loved it. My parents weren't thrilled that I was reading it, because I was probably only 12, 13 when I started. My One of
Mm-hmm.
my favorite things was to sign up for one of those books of the month. Like you got the four books from, I think it was like Harlequin or something,
Mm-hmm.
but you didn't know which books you were getting. So that was like I saved up my money to get that because it was so exciting to know I'd have these books coming. I'd ride my bike down to the library, check out every book I could. Um, and so it's always, any type of story, as long as it's romance, I'm in, but it's got to have like a happily ever after. I don't like really, you know, stuff that ends with any kind of death or anything. It's just not my thing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
life is already hard enough. So as long as it has an HEA, I'm pretty good. I don't really read any other kinds of books, never had, like I'd love to be able to say, oh yeah, say here's, give you the name of some fancy book that I've read, but it's like really no. I mean,
Yeah.
the only thing I've ever wanted to really read is romance. And so when I was in I'm in my 40s now, late 40s. And when I was in my 20s, probably even a little bit earlier, I started writing stories more just for myself. I actually started writing screenplays because I love movies also and really wanted to you get into the movie business. And of course, that was kind of a pipe dream and didn't realize how difficult it would be. So I started off by writing like all these romance movie scripts that never really saw the light of day or anything. And then I wrote, and in my 20s, I decided just to try writing an actual novel. And again, it was just for myself. I didn't have any intention of doing anything with it back then. Self-publishing, I don't think was even a thing. So it joined the scripts in, a plastic box in the garage. Um, and then so it was in 2015, so it's been 6 years now. I started having financial trouble pretty significantly that it was hard to even pay my electric bill. And I was having a lot of problems with sleeping and just not doing well overall. And so I happened to just by chance come across this thing on Amazon because I was an Amazon shopper. On the bottom of Amazon, it said something like "Publish your book with us," and I'm like, "What's this all about?" So I looked it up, and that's how I learned that that was a thing. And I'm like, "Well, what have I got to lose?" So I took that 20-year-old book out, updated things like newspapers, to tablets, and you know
Mm-hmm.
made put cell phones in there because that wasn't in there 20
Yeah.
some years ago. So and then I just put it out on Amazon. That is my first book that I ever released. It's an MF called Letting Go, and it's pretty cheesy. Like, I mean, it's again, I was in my 20s, and things are a lot different when you're in your 20s than
Mm-hmm.
when you're in your 40s. Um, so that book is still out there, and it actually led into my Protectors books by chance. But anyway, so I wrote that one. I made a little bit of money and thought, okay, I can do this. So I
Mm-hmm.
wrote a couple more MFs because I thought, even though I'd been reading primarily gay romance, I didn't think I could write it. I mean, I just didn't
Mm-hmm.
even occur to me. And so I wrote a couple more MF ones, and then I got to the third one in the series, which is the escort series. I got to the character of Logan, and I'm just like, who should I pair him up with? And it just suddenly hit me out of the blue, like, why not? I mean, what do I have to lose? Literally nothing. So I just did it, and really there was no looking back after that. I've written a couple more MFs, but certainly not, the same way I enjoy writing the MMs.
That is so funny that you say that because like I started with the Protectors and I saw your like reading order. If you want to read in like chronological order, I'm like, oh, what's this other
Yeah,
series? And then so I read the third book and I was like, oh wait, and I went to go to the other two. I'm like, what? This is MF? And then I read them. I was like, oh my goodness, these are really good too. I was like, I
thank
did
you.
not expect that. Cause I know your brand is like you have so many MM books now. That's like,
Right.
wait, she wrote MF, and then I'm like going back in for the catalog to some of your older series. I'm like, wait, there's more back there too.
Yeah. And they all
I read the
intertwine
Escort,
now.
and the Escort series is so good. Like the first book, I was like, oh my goodness, like this is like I love your MF. But I was like, I need more MF from you now because that was just so
I don't
that
think you're
was
getting it.
so
I don't think
good.
my fans would be happy to hear you say that because they don't want me switching back. So, but yeah, it's funny because the character of Jonas, who is in my first Protectors book, he appears in that very first MF novel that I wrote. So 20 years ago, 27 years ago, whatever, I had introduced this gay secondary character, and never in a million years would I have guessed that anything would happen, And so someone had asked me after I'd released some other books, they said, will Jonas ever find his happily ever after? And I'm like, sure, why not? And so I just threw them together with two guys and, never thinking it would really go anywhere. And it's become my flagship series, that I'm best known for, and that people still are crazy for the books from, even though there's, 14 plus,
See,
13 plus. So yeah.
oh, and I have a funny story about the first book in the Protector series. I didn't read the synopsis going into it. I didn't know it was gonna be a threesome, so I was like, oh,
Oh,
okay, I'm reading. And I was like, wait, hold on, is this a threesome? It's just like I was like, when they all meet, I was like, hold up, wait. And I look at the back of the synopsis, I'm like, oh, like that was quite dumb of you, Charles. And then from
yeah.
there, I was like hooked. From
Well,
the
that's
first book,
good
I was
then,
like,
because not everybody likes threesomes, and so they don't necessarily give them a chance, which I understand. But a lot of people have told me that my approach is a little bit different, where I'm able to make the characters more equal in the relationship. So, I tell everybody, to give it a shot. Again, what do you have to lose? So,
yeah. And you did a foursome, which I did not. I've never read that in MM.
right, that was a
I was
personal
reading this.
challenge.
I'm like,
Yeah.
how are you gonna do this? Like, where did that story come from? Because like,
Well, I had read a
I
book that had 5 guys in it, and so someone asked me at some point, would I ever do 4? And I'm like, again, I had, I like the idea of like, why not just try it? If I don't like it, I don't publish it. And it was very freeing because there were no rules. I mean, I could do whatever I wanted, so it came out a lot better than I thought. And it's led to some exciting things. So it's been really cool to get that it was such an enjoyed book by so many people, because it was just meant to challenge myself.
yeah, and I was reading this. I was like, how did you pull this off? I was like, I understand who all the characters are. Nothing is like muddled in my brain. Like I know where everyone is. So I was like, my mind was just blown by reading that book. I was like, I didn't know I needed this in the MM category, but now I need more of of this type of thing to be pushed out more. I need more of these in
Thank you.
MM. We're getting there. We're getting there slowly, and you're definitely
Yep.
leading the charge. But we can always use more. There's
Yep.
always room for more, especially in the
That's right.
MM category. Like I absolutely love it. So I also want to ask you too. What was the idea for the Protector series? Kind of like how do you just kind of stumble into that with that one character who appeared in the Escort, and then you just kind of built the
Um,
series from there?
so the Protectors series, again, it was just based on Jonas, and I knew I wanted to do something. I've always, liked the whole, someone needs to be rescued type thing, and then you've got your damaged heroes. I'd already done a threesome at that point, a threesome book, and so it's funny because from a business perspective, a lot of people will tell you as an author, don't start a new series with a threesome book because not everybody reads threesomes. And so you're potentially losing out on them not reading your entire series at all, which could very well be true. But again, I was at a stage in my career that I didn't know all this stuff. And so I can't tell you how I came up with that specific idea. I knew that there would be at least a few books in the series because I already had Ronan's character, as I was writing, I knew he would get a book. But I certainly didn't expect it to go as far as it has now. And when I made the decision to branch it over and tie it into my other series, again, that was just a fluke because I'd written Logan's Need first. There was no, at that time, because that story takes place, I think, like 7 years before the Protectors books start. So there was no correlation. It was just, I got to this point of, okay, now who do I, pair up Mav with in book 4? And then I thought, you know what, wouldn't it kind of be cool? Because people wanted to know I had planned to write about the kids anyway, like Eli and Tristan and Brennan. And then I thought, wouldn't it be cool? Because I love stories that intertwine like that, where it just gets bigger and bigger because it feels like you never really leave those families behind. You get to get these little glimpses and peeks. And so that's what I wanted to do. And it was definitely a challenge. And, it's not something I'd necessarily continue to build into because I think it could get too big. But yeah, it's been really cool.
Yeah, and just when I first stumbled upon the series and realized it was connected to other books, I think it was like halfway through the Protector series, and I was like, oh wait, I should look at this reading order to see if I'm missing anything. I'm like, oh wait, it's like, so I'm like, I'm already like way past. I'm like, I need to retroactively go back
Right.
and pick up the other series. And I was like, because I was like full steam ahead on the Protectors. I'll finish one book and I'm like, should I start the next book? Yes, we're gonna start the next book because you leave such good teases at the end. I'm like, now I need to know what happens. So
Right.
now I need to go on and use my KU and download it, get the audiobook and just go because I love these books. You managed to strike a really great balance between darkness and some lighthearted moments within the books. So I was wondering too, how you go about incorporating some of those darker elements because I feel like they're all handled really well in your books. Like if a character's going through grief, or sexual assault, or rape, or something like that, it's kind of you cover so many different ranges of issues in the Protector series and in your work in general. So I was wondering how you kind of go about navigating this because you do it so well.
I think a lot of people wonder why I do it. I myself am not a victim of those things, fortunately. But I think, that we as humans share, a lot of the same, issues when it comes to hard pasts. And, one of the things that I always found was that, when I was younger, I felt like there were things in my life that I couldn't talk about, or I didn't feel strong enough, or what have you. And as I got older, I've had some issues with depression, anxiety, stuff like that. So it's always been something that, you just feel like it's more appropriate to keep it to yourself. And so it made me wonder, people who are suffering, with things that are even darker than what I was dealing with. My heart went out to those individuals because, they're the ones who need the voice the most, and they're the ones that are less likely to have that. And so a lot of people will say, why do you always write so dark? Why do you always include things about sexual assault? And, the easy answer is I don't write light things very well. I don't do light and fluffy well. It's not what I care to read that much. And so I can't necessarily write it. I'd have to, my Christmas novella was supposed to be light and fluffy. And I still had someone getting shot,
Yeah.
So it's just like, I've had this conversation with a lot of other authors and with readers. I have to go with what I feel. And, I get to now be that voice for those people who don't have one or aren't ready to speak up. And I've gotten a lot of emails, that thank me for that, and that's why I do it, because I do understand darkness. I understand those internal feelings of self-hate and self-worth and lack thereof. And no one should feel alone in that. And so that's why I do write, what I write in terms of personal experience, like I said, there's a lot of things that, I can't personally relate to. But, it doesn't take a genius to understand some of the concepts behind, someone who was, sexually assaulted or abused as a child or what have you. No, I can't personally, understand it, but I can empathize with it, and I can do my best to understand the emotions, because again, that individual goes through a lot of those things that I might have gone through. So I understand that concept of feeling alone, of being afraid of not knowing what the next day will bring. So I can take those things and just use that in a different way. And like I said, try to be that voice for people who aren't ready to speak for themselves.
Mhm. And I love that you do that, especially since we're in the romance genre as well. So like you can put your characters through the ringer, and we're still gonna get that happily ever after for that couple in the end. And I
Right.
just love that journey because like they're dealing with some heavy issues going through, especially in the Protector series, and to see them go through that and still have their happily ever after, and like still they still may have lingering effects of like trauma, but like they still arrive to a happy place, and I like that we can get those explorations, we can dive into those topics, and I know you're gonna give me great steam, great characters, and a happily ever after. So I'm like, Sloane, you can go as dark as you want. 'Cause I know you're going to like land me in a very happily ever after spot. So I'll be like, I won't be like at the end of the book going like, I can't believe she just killed off the two main
Yeah.
characters and we didn't get a happily ever
Right.
after. Like, no, like you always make sure that we have a really good ending to the
Yeah. I
couple. I'm
always put
like,
your heart back together after I've stomped on it a bit.
yep. And so like I thought when going to watch me, your latest standalone, I was like, okay, this is gonna be like a fun like bodyguard type romance, and you still managed to slip in some like darker elements. So
I told you I can't write light and fluffy. I just can't do it.
I
In
was
fact,
reading, it's like, oh,
I've been complaining to myself that I haven't written dark enough lately, because Watch Me was somewhat lighter, but like with my current book that I'm working on, I've given myself permission to go back to the deep end of the dark stuff, because it had actually been a while since I had written something dark. It may seem like that's all I write, but if you look back at the last few books, there hasn't been as much darkness
much
in them.
darkness.
So, and I've actually found that I miss that. I actually need to write that, because it makes me, it's a certain form of therapy for me. So, so yeah, I'm going back to my roots, so to speak, with the next couple of books, and
Okay.
torturing my characters a bit more than usual.
Because I was, when I was reading Watch Me, I was like, oh, wait, this is kind of light for Sloane. So I was like, well, I'm missing my usual, like, darkness. And I was like, it did
Right.
get, like, slightly dark, but I was like, I'm used to, like,
Yeah.
Protectors. You start the book and you're like, this is going to be a dark ride. Like,
Yeah.
immediately, the first
Well,
Protectors
and
book
that's
is like,
why
oh,
I've
I'm sent
learned
to kill
about
this
that. You have to
person.
kind of stick to the brand. And so the Protector's brand is very, you can expect anything to happen. Whereas the Pelican Bay books, are meant to be more emotionally intense, but not necessarily as having the dark subject matter. So there are certain variations of challenges to me, because then I have to figure out, how do I still get that emotion out without having, some of that heavier stuff that will automatically, that's somewhat so-called easier to write about. So it's definitely a challenge, but I've learned that, again, I have different audiences, that some like the Pelican Bay stuff more, some like the Protectors more, some don't care. They like it all. I mean, it's just, I go with whatever I'm feeling at the time. And that's why right now I'm focused on some dark stuff again.
I'm so excited. Like, even Pelican Bay, I loved it. I loved how it just emotionally put you through the ringer, but I was like, I'm kind of missing Dark Sloane. I'm like, I really like these books, but I was like, so there's something about the Protectors, the darkness in it that I just like eat it up. It's like, it's so much fun. It's such a fun world. Not a fun world to be in, because the characters
Right.
go through so much. Like, I wouldn't want to be in their world,
No,
but like,
definitely not.
it's definitely fun to read about. So was like Pelican Bay kind of like a palate cleanser for you? That's why you just kind of decided to go and write that?
Is it like what?
Like a little bit like a palate cleanser from the Protector series? Like a little bit
Um,
less dark and more
it's more of,
more
I
emotionally
mean,
charged.
I don't know if you read all three books that are out there in the
Mm-hmm.
series. Um, and there's going to be a total of 6 books, no crossing over.
Oh, okay.
So it'll end after 6 books for sure. So, the Pelican Bay series, I'm going to be working on that next after I'm done with I'm finishing up the 4 series right now, and then I'll switch to Pelican Bay. And so that it's going to continue to look at, difficult issues, but not necessarily the sexual assault type, the rape
Mm-hmm.
stuff. It won't
Mm-hmm.
quite go that dark. So I'm trying to keep those so that those people who prefer not to go that dark, can still read that series and know that they're still getting intense stuff. But it's surprising how many people are very triggered by, especially anything involving children being assaulted. So even if it's in the past,
Mm-hmm.
my co-author Lucy Lennox is one of those people because she's a mom and she has kids, and it's never something I really understood till she and I had a good conversation about it, that, her perspective and mine are so different. I'm not a mom. I don't have children. I have nieces. But it's not the same. We've also had very different lives growing up. And so we have a different need from our books. She needs the light, the fluffy. That's what she does really well. And
Mm-hmm.
she enjoys reading it. I need the dark because it's a form of therapy. I like giving that to others, but not everybody, can handle. So I'm trying to still be able to give those people a chance to enjoy some of my books, knowing that there will be some, whether it's a threesome or, something with two, a rape scene or whatever, knowing that there will be books that they won't read. And that's why I do trigger warnings,
Mm-hmm.
because I want people to know what they're getting into so that they're not caught off guard. The last thing I want to do is trigger someone, inadvertently. So,
Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate that you do that, especially in the dark romance category. I know, like, as a fan of dark romance myself, and I consider Projectors like almost kind of in that dark category as well. I know a lot of readers, a lot of like romance readers who don't read dark romance. For people who do, it's kind of like I need to know like exactly what your triggers are before I recommend you certain books within that genre. So I like that you include trigger warnings because there's some books out there that have zero trigger warnings, and you have to kind of like go by word of mouth and try to figure out like, okay, where like who knows this about this book. So I really
right.
like that you put that there. So like you can go into it knowing like, okay, if these things are going to be triggers for you, like just don't read it. Try another book and go with that one. So I really appreciate that. And I think a lot of readers too appreciate that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then I also want to talk about a little bit about the Four Men series because the second book, which is really cool, you have a protagonist that has diabetes and who is going blind.
Right.
And I was like, I've never seen this in the MM. So like, what was the idea behind that series? Because that series is like, it's. I feel like it's like destroying me more than the Protector series. Like what those characters go through. And when I got to the second book, I was like, okay, Sloane, like what? A character going blind? I was like, oh no. I was like, what if like my heart can't take it? So like, what was your idea behind that series in particular? And is it connected to the Protectors series?
So the 4 is a spin-off of the Protectors. So um, Luca, who is in book 1, and Remy, you actually meet them in the book 13 of the Protectors, which is Alex and Vaughn's story. Vaughn and Luca are brothers, and then Remy and Alex are friends. Um, so it's interesting because I call it the 4, even though there are technically 5 brothers if you
Mm-hmm.
include Vaughn. So it's a little confusing. I realized kind of after the fact as I was writing, I'm like, that might confuse people. But anyhow, so the first one was Luca's story, and was kind of bridging the gap between the Protectors and then this new series. And then I hinted at in that first book about Lex and the mystery behind him, and where was he and why had he kind of gone off the map and what was going on with that. I like the idea of writing more challenging characters, like someone with a physical ailment or health issue. Locked in Silence is one of my probably most popular books, um, because it involves a character who is mute. And it's funny because that story was a challenge from Lucy. I said, what should I write? And she's like, I'd really like to see you write a character with some kind of disability, and so I'm like, okay. And so, again, it was something where she challenged me to do something, and it happened to just work out really well. And that series, or that book, has actually, done a lot better than I thought it would. Again, it was supposed to, just be this side thing to do something besides the protectors, but it's just as maybe not as huge, but people still ask me constantly, for the next book. So anyhow, the second book was originally Lex's story was supposed to be the third book, and Khan's story, which is the one I'm working on now, was supposed to be the second one, because I'd gotten all the covers ahead of time, so I knew what my guys looked like and such. But I was just really itching to write Lex's story. And I knew that I wanted to write a blind character. And then I thought about adding in the complication of diabetes because, Lex is someone who's just had health issues from the get-go. And I wanted to show that he's still strong, despite all that, but at the same time that he does also need someone like Gideon in his corner. So it's not some big like epiphany that I'm having when I come up with these characters. It's just something I see, whether it's in life or in another book or whatever. And I just want to challenge myself. Second book in Locked in the Pelican Bay series was Sanctuary Found, which featured a man who likes to wear women's lingerie. Not something I ever thought I'd be interested in. Like, just wasn't even on my radar. And a Facebook friend, she's actually my editor, Courtney. She I think sent me an invite to a group, or she sent me pictures of some men in lingerie, and it was like surprisingly sexy. And I was just like, it started making my head wonder what, would make a man want to dress, like that. And what would, he be feeling? And so it intrigued me. And again, it's not like that series was probably the best place to put something so unusual, but at the same time, I don't really play by the rules. That was just the character that I wanted to go with at that time, and that's who I went with. And so if it doesn't necessarily fit the brand of the series, then okay, too bad. This is just the way it went. So, so that's who I saw with the other main character, and that's who it ended up being. So yeah, back to Lex. It's the same concept. I for whatever reason wanted to try to write someone, with those challenges. And so that's just what I did. And then that storyline ties in with the book I'm writing now with Khan, because he and King have done a lot for Lex. And so, you kind of get to see what's going on behind that, and how their story, all three of them, kind of, tie together.
Oh, that's really cool. And that's one thing that I love about your books is that you never know exactly what you're going to get before you go into one of your books. It could be like this trope or this thing or like this thing. I was like, Sloane, you're really doing, I think you like covered almost like every single trope that I could think of that I wanted. The only thing that you haven't done, I don't think you have done, is like superheroes or like full blown paranormal. I'm like, keep that on your
And
radar,
people
Sloane.
have asked me about paranormal, and my answer to them is I do not have the creativity to world build. I'm very bad at writing descriptions, and Lucy and I joke about it because she's great. She can take you and put you in the middle of like a house, and you can see it. I try to put you in that house, and I can see it really clear in my head. But when I try to put on paper what the walls look like or what the furniture looks like, it's like I can't come up with the words, and I just struggle so badly at it. So I don't spend a lot of time on that. But for something like paranormal, that is like a requirement. I would stink at trying to world build. So yes, I can do the characters, but I don't have the imagination to pull off something like that. If anything, I'd have to co-write with someone who was really good at that. But that's the reason I don't write paranormal, because people have asked me about that.
Okay. I was hoping you had something like brewing in your head because I was like, I am
Not
like
yet.
such a huge paranormal kick and I want more in the MM space. I'm like, Sloan, you gotta have something for me.
Not
Or maybe
yet.
you can
No.
co-write with Lucy and like
Lucy, I
maybe
don't
do
think
something
she's done
there.
anything paranormal. So yeah, I don't think she's done anything or has expressed interest, but we'll see. I never say never, because I never thought I'd do a lot of things, but I did. So
Yeah, I'm putting it out there. Like everyone just bothers Sloan and to say, when's a paranormal novel? Like we have these lists of authors that you can choose to
then
co-write
I'll
with.
tell them that they can't get any other books until I can put out a good paranormal, and we'll see what happens. No
Yeah,
more
I think then
Protectors, no more Pelican Bay, no more.
you would not you No, you can't do that
All
to
right, so you
protectors.
need to take back the paranormal suggestion, or I will get emails and calls and whatever. So
I will take that back. We want our other books,
that's
but
right.
like just like subtle
When I'm
nods here and
bored
there.
and I can't think of anything else to do, then I'll see what I can do.
Just include it in a review saying like, "Oh, amazing book, 5 out of 5 stars." Maybe that one character could be a vampire, and just like little pokes here and there, because we don't
Okay.
want to stop the flow of the Protectors books because I absolutely love them. I'm like afraid of running out, so I'm like I'm gonna pace myself so I don't run out. But I absolutely love them, and I did want to ask: are there any other like different tropes or subgenres that you would like to kind of dive into within the MM romance space?
Um,
Like,
you know, there's nothing like, as significant as paranormal, like a big shift like that, that I would like to try. I think I've found kind of what I'm good at, and what I enjoy the most. I am looking at with my Love and Eden series when I get back to that. One of the books in that series will be, I hesitate to call it a daddy book because it's not really about the kink. But it is that kind of relationship where it is a significantly older man, and a significantly younger one. And it's got the verbiage of, the younger man
mm-hmm,
needing to call him, and all that. But I hate to call it, BDSM or anything like that because I don't really write BDSM. I've come close to it with like Discovering Daisy, which is I think it's my only MMF. And I found that I really enjoyed that. But again, I think if you ask the average person who reads BDSM, they wouldn't agree that that's what kind of book it is, even though two of the characters have a dominant and submissive role. It has more to do with like needs rather than it being about
mm-hmm,
desire.
mm-hmm,
So I try to I don't like to fall under a label like that. So the same thing I think would happen with any kind of daddy book. It might start off as
mm-hmm,
seeming like just this kinky, relationship, but it's going to be a lot more than that. Um, so that, if anything, that's kind of going to be a little bit of something different. I've already written the first chapter. It was actually this thing where some of us authors got together and we wrote some little short stories for a friend, as a birthday present, and they were just for fun. And so I had written this little chapter, and I started like really enjoying it and thinking, oh, I could really get into these two characters. So definitely I'm going to revisit them at some point. Other than that, I'm so far behind on my books that I haven't even had time to think of like future, because I'm realizing I need to get through the majority of my series before I hop into another one, or I end up with
mm-hmm.
way too many projects going on. So again, it's one of those never say never. But I wouldn't even know what other tropes people kind of want to see. I feel like I've covered
Mm-hmm.
quite a few of them. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like you have like run the gamut. I was like, I really wonder if there's like a trope that you haven't done that you like really, really, really want to that you haven't done in any of your like 20 plus books. I would have been shocked if there's one that like you haven't already been able to cover so far.
right.
And in terms of like future projects, do you have like any definite plans to like for like ending any of the series? Or like I know the Pelican Bay you said was only going to be 6 books, but do you
Right.
think
The
there's going to be
four
end
will
to like the
end,
Protectors?
obviously. The protectors will probably continue on for a while, only because the demand is still there. I'm doing less of those per year just because the demand also isn't there. I get a lot of, um, not a lot, but some feedback that they get repetitive, and it is true, and that's intended because it's a bodyguard series. It's about
Mm-hmm.
a big mercenary type guy protecting someone who needs protecting.
Mm-hmm.
That's in the name of the series. Um, so there's always going to be people who want to read that. And, as hard as I try to make the storylines different, it's not always going to be possible after,
Mm-hmm.
14 some books or 13
Books.
books and several novellas and whatever. Um, but I think that the need's going to be there. It's, something I still enjoy. I still have Dalton and Silver's story to do, which is book 14. Um, and then I still have planned characters I introduced in the crossover with Lucy's series, that came out with Made Mine. those were I can't even remember their names. American Dex, I think. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's still a plan there to do those. It's just I don't do as many of those as I used to, just because I have to focus on, you know, more than just that to keep the level of readers that I need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's. I was like really curious because I was like, the Protectors is a lot of books, and I love it. And like, I just want to kind of savor and take up of it. But I love like when you do like side projects, like Watch Me. When that came out, I was like, "Ooh, like what is that?" I was like, "Not the Protectors, and it's not related to the Protectors in any way." So I was like, "Ooh." I was like, so I like when you kind of branch off and like I love your series with Lucy, and and you are gonna plan on writing more books in the Love and Eden series as well because I believe there's
Yeah,
only one book
yeah.
available right now.
There's a book, and then there's two novellas. Well, one's more of a short story, and then one is a novella, an MF novella.
So what? So like, what will be coming up like coming the soonest from you that fans can expect to read next from you?
So next will be Khan's book In the Four. So that I'm really hoping to get out in June. I'm about 2/3 of the way done with it. So my goal is to finish it this month and then get it out next month. Then right after that, I'm going to go into King's book, which is the fourth book. His book, he is matched up with Geo, who is the son of Luca.
Ooh.
Luca's son is only 15 in the end of the book, so it'll fast forward a few years, at least probably about 4 years till he's 19 or so. Um, and his uncle King, which, you know, his King is not really his uncle. It's not his
Uncle.
a blood relative
Mm-hmm.
in any way. You know, that will be who I pair together. And I've gotten a lot of excitement about that. And I'm excited because King is going to be one of those characters that's, um, you just know, you know, deep down he's a really good guy, but you also know he's got a lot of things going on, and
Mm-hmm.
he's just, you know, gruff. And you know, he reminds me a lot of one of my favorite characters, who's Vincent from Defiance. He's been one of my favorites because he's like a take no prisoners, no excuses. You know, like there's a scene where he's interrogating the bad guy, you know, and in most cop movies, you know, or you know, spy movies or whatever, it's like, you know, they ask the question and then there's this whole conversation. And
Mm-hmm.
with, you know, it's very simple with Vincent. You know, if he doesn't get the answer he wants, he shoots the guy in the knee. You know, okay, let's start again. You know, and then he'll shoot the other knee. And you know, he doesn't mess around. And so that's what I love about Vincent. And so King reminds me of that he's going to be a lot like that. It's just he knows what's right and wrong, and he's just going to do it and screw whoever stands in his way. So yeah,
Ooh.
that's what's next, and then after that, I'll shift back to finishing up the Pelican Bay series. Like I said, 3 more books in that series.
Favorite book. And will we be getting audiobooks for the rest of the books in the four series?
Yep, the audiobooks for the 4 series come out as the new books come out. So usually within a month, the book ebook releasing, the audiobook comes out. The rest of the Protectors should be coming out on audio within the rest of this year. Michael Dean is just finished Finding Hope, so now he's got, I think, 4 Protectors books left to do, and then he's all caught up. So hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be all done with the Protectors on audio, or up to date, I should
Up
say.
to date.
Yep,
Because like Michael Dean is a fantastic narrator,
it
and so like I
is.
just love that he's like pretty much. I think he narrates almost all your audiobooks.
He pretty
And
much
the product.
does at this point, because you know I'm one of those people that when I find someone I like, I don't like really, you know, trying to find someone else. Why fix something that isn't broken? So,
Mm-hmm.
um, so yeah, I don't have any, you know, plans. And it's interesting because some people love his voice, others don't care for his voice, and it's the same with literally any narrator, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Or it's life itself is all about, you know, one person likes something, another person doesn't. So I've stopped worrying about, you know, some people
Yeah.
don't like him, some people do. So just like he doesn't worry about it either. So
You can't please everyone, but like for
exactly,
me, Michael
really.
Dean is like one of the probably one of the best audiobook narrators out there. Like if I see his name, like even if it's not on any of your books, but on someone else's book, I'm like, ooh, Michael Dean narrated this. I'm like, let me check. Like, let me buy this. Like, I know he's good. I know he'll do a
Yeah,
really great job with the characters and like making sure that you can distinguish them, which I think sometimes in a lot of audiobooks that some narrators don't do. They don't change
Right.
the like pitch of their voice. I'm like, whose character are we in? Like, like, like who? Like, okay, so I have to like pick up the paperback or the ebook and like, okay, we're in this person's chapter just to remind myself because I will kind of like flip them around in my head. But I'm
Yeah.
so happy that we're getting more audiobooks. I will save up my credits, so as soon as they go live, I'm just gonna go binge buy them because I love your audiobook. So I'm just like eagerly waiting. I was waiting for Watch Me. I'm like, okay, when is it gonna drop on audio? Like I'm refreshing the page. I'm like, don't make me
Yeah.
read it. So I want to listen to the audio
Yeah. I
first.
wish I could do it faster, but it's just because you can't give, I can't give him the manuscript till I'm done, and I have usually such a short turnaround time that I'm working on, and and he needs at least a few weeks to do his thing, and so it's not a, unless I could really plan ahead, where I'm not releasing the ebook version until the audio is closer to being done. But at this point, I mean, I've got so many people eager to get the ebook. I just got to get it out there. So
Yeah, sometimes I'm just like, you know what? I can't wait. Like, I'm just gonna pick up the ebook, and I'm gonna get through it. Hopefully, by like when I'm halfway through, then the audio drops, so I can just go like whisper sync and like just go right to the audio and continue on with the rest of the story. So like, it's okay. I'm patient. I can wait, and then like I also just love reading your books too. Like, there's not a ton of authors that, since I'm such an audiobook listener, that I'm willing to actually physically read their ebooks. I'm usually like, okay, where's the audio? Like, I need to see an audio pop up before I go and buy your ebook. But for yours, I'm just like, I'm gonna read it anyway. So
you'll
like,
sacrifice your eyes.
I'm gonna sacrifice my eyes. I have my Kindle, so I'm like, why am I complaining? Like, I know I'm gonna enjoy this. I'm like, I can wait for the audio, or I can just like read it right now because I just want to know what's going on in this story. So like, you're the one of the few authors that convert me into an actual physical reader. So I'm like, that's like you're like like greatest of all time in terms of authors.
Oh,
You're
thank
like in my
you.
top authors pantheon. If you can get me to do that, so like, bow down to you.
Thank you. That's awesome.
And do you actually like to listen to your own audiobooks, or do you enjoy
I'm not a
listening to
huge
audiobooks?
listener of audiobooks in general. The only time I ever listened to them is it used to be when I was on a road trip.
Mm-hmm.
And even with that, I've found more recently that I prefer listening to music. So I'm not a big listener. I'm one of those people, like people say, oh, I do the laundry or I do this while I have trouble focusing on two things like that at once. I mean, as ridiculous as it sounds, um, I used to have to edit my or proof my audiobooks, which basically means just listening to them to see if there's any errors. And that was a very long process for me. It was, easily 8 hours, 10 hours, what have you. And that in itself was very difficult because literally I could not do anything else. I had to listen
Mm-hmm.
and pay attention.
Focus.
And I didn't have the patience for it because I have just so many other things going on. So now I have a friend do it. I pay someone, one of my Facebook friends, to do it because I know she'll listen and she'll know when things aren't quite right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I think, and again, it comes down to my tastes. One of the very last ones I listened to was on a road trip with, I think I was with my sister, but then she flew home and I drove back by myself. So I listened to The Lightning Struck Heart by TJ Klune.
Ooh.
And it's a comedy. And again, it's not I think Lucy recommended it because she really loved that book and the audiobook. She's a big audiobook person. And I just couldn't get into it just because, again, it's not my style. And
Mm-hmm.
it was okay enough to keep my attention, like on the road, but it wasn't. I need a certain book because I remember there was one audiobook that really made the hours go by fast, and that was years ago. I think it was called Prey by Michael Crichton or whatever his name is. I remember that was like a suspense, and that one had me literally at the edge of my seat as I'm driving. So I think it would have to be like a really amazing audiobook. Oh, and then Cage. I listened to that series on audiobook when I left GRL one week to drive home.
Mm-hmm.
But I was so impatient because it's such a slow pace of the narrating that by the time I got home, the first thing I did was get my Kindle out and start
And
reading
just
the
start
rest
reading it.
because I can read it so much faster, and I didn't want to wait for someone else to tell me the story. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's not something I'm a huge fan of, and so I rely on kind of others to tell me things like, oh, this narrator is really good and this one maybe not so much, and because it's just not something I enjoy. So
Mhm. Yeah. I completely get it. Like I do think I can read physically read faster than I can listen. Oddly, like if I'm really in a book, I can just like fly through it. But versus with the audio, I'm like, okay, how many hours left do I have in this book? I was like,
all right.
speed it up. Like I can pick up the ebook and just breeze through it. And like, especially like having the headphones on, I always have the issue where I forget to connect my phone to my headphones, and then it happens to be on a really steamy scene. And then, of course, it's in public where a bunch of
Yep,
people
you're
are
on a
around. I'm
train
like,
or the bus, or yep, sure, or your parents are around, or yeah.
and you're just like, sorry, like, pause.
I
And of
think I
course,
had
that's when
that
the
with
audio app starts to
yeah, with
starts to
my nieces
malfunction.
were in the car, and my sister, she knows what I write, and so she had hit something on my phone and it started playing the first chapter of one of my books. And it wasn't anything bad because it didn't start off bad, but she was like, "Oh my God." And she's like freaking out that the kids are going to hear something. I'm like, "Relax. It's not, going to start off like that." So, but yeah, I get it.
hmm Like, there's a different struggle. Like, I love them, but sometimes I'm like, of course, I always have to stop it at a very steamy scene, put it down, and then like want to restart it later. And of course, my technology does not like me, and then everyone and their mother can hear what I'm listening to at the very wrong moment.
Right.
But I
Well,
also too
it
want.
does make me wonder while you're stopping it in the middle of a steamy scene, like what that means, but okay.
I don't know. Like I'm very weird with like sometimes I'll stop it. Like I usually like to finish them out, but sometimes I just get sidetracked. I'm like, oh, let me watch this YouTube video or something. So I'm like
Okay.
I'm like nonsensical. It's like everyone knows I'm a weird reader. I do weird things when I read. Sometimes I like, yeah, like I'm all over the place. But I
Okay.
also wanted to ask you too. What are some of your favorite romance books or authors that you've been recently loving or all-time favorites?
So I actually have not been reading for the last several years. It's funny because before I started writing, I was a voracious reader, just like most
Mm-hmm.
romance people are. I would just, you know, and I would go for weeks and weeks where I would read instead of watch television, and then I'd switch it up and watch television for weeks and weeks. But for something within the last couple of years or 3 years, I found that because I'm writing during the day or because I'm dealing with stuff during the day, in the evening, I need my time to be about quiet and focusing on one thing. I don't want to be dealing with emotional things. So reading a book or watching like an intense movie that I don't already know what's going to happen is just not for me necessarily. So the only books I've actually read in the last few years are the ones I beta read for Lucy, which of course I enjoy. I've also gotten to read some of her books with her other co-author May Archer,
Gotcha.
and that's been a lot of fun. I I'm trying to think. So way back in the day, one of my favorite authors, and I don't think she's writing anymore, but I still remember her books. It's Cameron Dane. Um, and I don't know if you've ever read her, but her books are also paranormal. And I don't typically read paranormal. Like it's not,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like you, where I just started reading this book, and it wasn't until I got to this part where the guy turns out to be some kind of demon that I'm like, what the f, like what am I reading? Because I had no clue that was part of, and I don't know if I just hadn't read the blurb very well or not at all, but yeah, it was some kind of thing where he turns into a demon, and by that time it was way too late. I was so hooked on anything she wrote. So she's one of my all-time favorites, and have always loved her books. So I think if I ever go back to do like a reread, she'd probably be one of the ones I'd want to do that. I'm very weird about that. I don't have like a lot of favorite authors where I've loved everything they've ever written. Like, doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
what it is. I tend to kind of find that that I have one or two super favorites. Cara D has a couple that I really like. I think one is Noah and one is called like Homeless or something like that. So I have a couple here and there, but it's hard to remember them all because there are only a couple usually from each author, and not necessarily every single book. I know that Sandrine Gask-Dion, who passed away a few years back, she was one of my favorites. I used to read her All and her books, some of them were like the Protector's books with the the Shifter's Assassin series, I think. I remember like I would binge read those. Like at Thanksgiving, I would have to travel with the family to the relatives, and I was not loving to have to interact with the relatives. So I would go into my little room underneath the stairs, and I would, get out my Kindle and I'd just read one book after another of hers. So she's one that I think, managed to do that at least with one series for me where I was like you, I just couldn't put it down and had to go on to the next and the next. So there's a few, but it's strangely odd that I'm one of those few that no longer does a lot of reading, period, of any kind of books. I'll reread my own just so I remember what I wrote, but that's about it.
And especially because you published so many books, so like it's completely understandable. And you get to beta read Lucy Lennox's books, which I'm like super jelly because I love her books as well. Her books are so good. Like I haven't read her more recent collaboration with her collaboration with May Archer yet. I have them on my Kindle. I'm just like I'm still working through your backlist, Lucy. Like you and Sloane are just like leaving me in the
I know she's
dust.
getting a big backlist now. Yeah,
I was like, you guys are leaving me in the dust. I'm like, I cannot keep up. Like, I'm a
you,
fast reader,
you
but
need to
then I'm like,
put your day job or whatever and just read.
hey, I would not be mad about that. Sometimes I'm just like, I get in the mood where like I just need good and I need my good authors, and I can't like try these like random offshoots. Like, I can try a couple new ones here now and then, but like, I need my Sloane, I need my Lucy, I need my like TJ Klune. I need like people who I know who are gonna deliver in their romances, and they're actually gonna be really good. So like. Sometimes when I go into that hole, I'm just like, sorry, I'm going to be reading for the next 2 weeks. Don't bother me. But then I also want to ask you, which is my final question, what have been some of your favorite movies or TV shows that you've been enjoying so far? It can be all time or this year.
So it's, in the past couple of years, I've been on this weird kick where I will watch the same series over and over again. I like to work on jigsaw puzzles in the evening. It helps my mind kind of calm down and wind down. And so, but at the same time, I like having something playing in the background. So I would just, like Hell's Kitchen was one of the reality shows I would just turn on. There's like 15 seasons or something crazy like that. Um, there's been a couple. I'm like right now I'm doing the Criminal Minds series over where it's just again kind of running in the background so I can do other things because I've seen it enough. But then I did actually so my point being the same with movies. I would watch the same movies over and over again until I felt like moving on to a different one. So finally over Christmas this past year, I decided to branch out and try something different because I was bored. And so I ended up watching two things. One was Cobra Kai, which is on Netflix, which I just didn't think I'd like at all. It was awesome. Like I was so hooked so fast. Like I can't even make sense of how I enjoyed it as thoroughly as I did. And now I'm waiting for the next season. Stranger Things is another one where now I'm stuck waiting for the next season. So I do understand the concept of having to wait and wait and wait, and it stinks. But on Christmas, the other one I got hooked on was The Witcher, which is also on Netflix. It's Henry Cavill. Oh, I'm dying. Like
one.
It just, and I've fallen so in love with him. So I've been watching a lot of like his Superman movies over and over again with Man of Steel and then the Batman. And then the Zack Snyder Justice League version just came out, which was phenomenal. So I've been watching that. So I've been watching Man of Steel, the Batman versus Superman, and then the Justice League one, those three kind of in a row. I've also been watching the Godzilla movies. I really like it's like the second Godzilla movie and then the most recent one with Godzilla and Kong. So I kind of get in these weird ruts where I just like to watch the same thing and I don't like trying new things because I just don't want to deal with, especially if it's like a series and then all of a sudden they cancel it after a year and then you're just left hanging. I've had that happen so many times that I just get frustrated. So I kind of wait to see, is there going to be another season? Because if not, then I'm not getting invested. So I understand people's pain when they're talking to me about, I need my next Protectors book. I get it. I understand because I'm in that same boat. Not with the books, but yeah, with the television.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm a big TV watcher and I'm huge on Netflix. So I get super angry when Netflix like cancels a show after one season that I actually really liked.
Yep.
So I'm just like, I'm like the one of those people like where's the petition to sign to so I can save this show? I'm like, you did
Right.
us wrong, Netflix. Bring this show back. But
That's right.
I love your picks of shows too. Like I haven't finished The Witcher. I only watched one episode, but I need to get back to it. I was like waiting for season 2 to like when it comes out so I can just
Yeah.
have more episodes to binge because I know I'm gonna want to binge.
Well, I
But
had to watch it twice because the first time around, my sound quality on my TV wasn't great. I couldn't understand
uh,
any of it. Like, and I missed
mhm,
so much of the backstory. So then I got sound bars for my television and it made a huge difference. So then I watched the whole thing again and like, oh, that's what they were saying. And so things started to make sense. And again, because it's a whole different world and they talk so fast,
mhm,
you really don't understand what's going on anyway. And so you kind of have to
mhm.
watch it at least a couple times. So now I'm waiting for the second season to come out, and then I'll start and watch number one again over, and then dive into number two. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm hanging.
Okay, and if you want a new show, I know you're not always open to new shows. It's Elite on Netflix. It's a
I have
murder mystery.
actually, I
Have you
like
seen
to,
it?
well, no, I like to Google when I'm feeling like I need inspiration. I Google like best gay kisses on YouTube and stuff, and I feel like that program was on there. And so I saw it, and it seemed like it either has a gay storyline as a secondary or something. So I that was in my head that I need to check that on Netflix to see what it's about.
Yeah, it's for a high school show. It's pretty like mature and what happens. Like there's like threesomes. There's like I think it's like almost every season the couples all change. So everyone's
Oh,
like it's like completely new couples every
but I need
single
happily ever
season.
after though. That doesn't sound like HEA.
Oh no, you definitely won't. Characters die. Like a lot like I think there's like one character if you watch the show it's a really addicting show kind of like murder mystery almost like Riverdale-esque but like when some of the characters die you're like like no
That was
and
like
you
Game of
know
Thrones
but they tell you in the
characters dying
beginning so
off.
like you know who dies for that show and so you're just like and you're just like finding out what happens so you're just like I don't want to see this character die. Like
Yeah, that seems
it's a
cruel.
really good show. It's a really good show. Like for it being not in English, completely not in English. They have like English dub, so like you don't have to read subtitles. But like I just binged it all in one day. It's so easy to get through. It's so good.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. But thank you so much, Sloan, for coming on my channel. It has been a pleasure talking with you, and now I have to go read more books by you because now I just want to read. I'm determined to read your entire backlist. So I'm like, Sloan, I'm ready for the next book. Hit me with the next
Okay.
book. So like I'm gonna do my work. I'll probably check back with you in like 2 weeks. I'll probably have all the books read by then. But for you guys who are interested in picking up the books, I will link all Sloan's social media links down below, as well as links where you can go buy her books on Amazon. And if you're a fan of her audiobooks, I'll leave that link for her Audible page as well down below as well. You guys should go check out her books. I highly recommend that you start with The Protectors and kind of branch your way out from there like I did. I think that's a really fun way. Or you can do the reading order, which I'll link down below as well. But thank you, Sloan, for coming on my channel, and I'll catch you guys with a brand new video. Bye,
Thank you so much.
everyone.
Bye.